Why they killed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The whole story behind. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is one of the most influential political and religious figures in the contemporary Middle East. Born on April 19, 1939, in Mashhad, a major religious city in northeastern Iran, he rose from a relatively modest clerical background to become the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, the highest authority in the country. His life story is deeply intertwined with Iran's modern history, especially the revolutionary transformation that reshaped the state in the late 20th century. Khamenei was born into a religious family. His father, Javad Khamenei, was a cleric of modest means, and the family lived a simple life. Growing up in Mashhad, which is home to the shrine of Imam Reza and considered one of the holiest cities in Shia Islam, he was immersed in religious learning from an early age. He began his formal religious education in local seminaries, studying Arabic grammar, Islamic jurisprudence, logic, and theology. His intellectual development was shaped by traditional Shia scholarship as well as exposure to political ideas circulating among clerics who were increasingly critical of the monarchy. In his youth, Iran was ruled by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, whose regime pursued modernization and maintained close ties with Western powers, especially the United States. Many clerics and religious activists criticized the Shah's policies as authoritarian, culturally westernizing, and dismissive of Islamic values. During his seminary years, Khamenei became influenced by the teachings of senior clerics who opposed the monarchy. One of the most important figures in shaping his worldview was Ruhollah Khomeini, who would later lead the revolution that overthrew the Shah. In the 1960s, Khamenei became actively involved in religious and political circles that supported Khomeini's opposition movement. When Khomeini criticized the Shah's policies, particularly land reforms and expanded rights for women under the so-called White Revolution, the regime responded with repression. Khamenei was arrested multiple times during the 1960s and 1970s for his activism and speeches criticizing the government. These arrests and periods of imprisonment played a formative role in shaping his perception of the monarchy as unjust and oppressive. Throughout the 1970s, opposition to the Shah grew among various segments of Iranian society, including religious scholars, leftist groups, and secular nationalists. Khamenei continued preaching and organizing within religious networks. His sermons often blended theological themes with political critique, framing resistance to the Shah as a moral and religious duty. He developed a reputation as an articulate speaker capable of mobilizing support within religious communities. The pivotal turning point came in 1979 with the Islamic Revolution. Mass protests, strikes, and political unrest forced the Shah to leave Iran. Khomeini returned from exile and established the Islamic Republic. Khamenei quickly emerged as one of the key figures within the new political order. The revolution replaced the monarchy with a system based on the concept of Vilayat-e-Faqih, or guardianship of the Islamic jurist, which placed ultimate authority in the hands of a senior cleric. In the early years of the Islamic Republic, Khamenei held various important positions. He served as Deputy Defense Minister, a member of the Revolutionary Council, and later as a member of Parliament. He also played a role in shaping the new security apparatus. During this period, the newly formed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps became a powerful institution tasked with protecting the revolution. Khamenei maintained close ties with revolutionary institutions, reinforcing his position within the political elite. In 1981, amid political turmoil and internal power struggles, Khamenei was elected president of Iran. This period coincided with the outbreak of the Iran-Iraq War, a devastating 8-year conflict that began when Iraq invaded Iran under Saddam Hussein. As president, Khamenei worked alongside Prime Minister Mir Hossein Mousavi and under the overarching authority of Khomeini. The war consumed national resources and shaped Iran's political culture, emphasizing sacrifice, resistance, and self-reliance. Khamenei's role during the war years strengthened his credentials as a loyal revolutionary leader. An important moment in his life occurred in June 1981, when he survived an assassination attempt. A bomb exploded during a speech he was delivering at a mosque in Tehran, severely injuring his right arm, which was partially paralyzed as a result. The attack elevated his status among supporters, who viewed him as a symbol of resilience and dedication to the revolution. When Ayatollah Khomeini died in 1989, Iran faced a critical leadership transition. The body constitutionally responsible for selecting the supreme leader, the Assembly of Experts, convened to determine Khomeini's successor. Although Khamenei did not initially hold the highest rank in the clerical hierarchy, he was chosen as supreme leader. The constitution was amended to remove the requirement that the supreme leader be a marja, or top-ranking religious authority, clearing the way for his appointment. As supreme leader, Khamenei assumed ultimate authority over Iran's armed forces, judiciary, state broadcasting, and key policy decisions. While the president and parliament handle day-to-day governance, the supreme leader sets the broad direction of domestic and foreign policy. Over the decades, Khamenei consolidated power by building alliances with military leaders, conservative clerics, and political factions aligned with his vision. Under his leadership, Iran pursued a policy emphasizing independence from Western influence, regional influence expansion, and resistance to perceived external pressure. He has consistently framed the United States as a hegemonic power seeking to dominate the Middle East and undermine Iran's sovereignty. He has also maintained a strong rhetorical stance against Israel, portraying it as illegitimate and oppressive toward Palestinians. Domestically, Khamenei has overseen a political system characterized by elections but with strict oversight by unelected bodies such as the Guardian Council, which vets candidates. Critics argue that political freedoms are limited and that dissent is often suppressed. Supporters contend that the system protects Islamic values and national independence. Throughout his tenure, Iran has experienced periods of social unrest, economic hardship, and political reform movements. Notable protests occurred in 1999, 2009, 2017, 2019, and 2022, reflecting public dissatisfaction with economic conditions, political restrictions, or specific government decisions. Khamenei has generally responded by emphasizing stability and cautioning against foreign interference, while security forces have moved to contain unrest. Economically, his era has been marked by significant challenges, including international sanctions targeting Iran's oil exports and financial system. Khamenei has promoted the concept of a resistance economy, encouraging domestic production and reduced reliance on foreign imports. Sanctions have had a deep impact on inflation, currency value, and living standards, shaping much of Iran's modern economic experience. In regional affairs, Khamenei has supported alliances with governments and non-state actors aligned with Iran's interests. This strategy has expanded Iran's influence in countries such as Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Critics describe this as destabilizing interference, while supporters frame it as defensive strategy to prevent hostile powers from encircling Iran. Over time, Khamenei's leadership style has been characterized by caution, pragmatism within ideological boundaries, and a long-term strategic outlook. While maintaining firm ideological positions, he has occasionally allowed negotiations, such as the 2015 nuclear agreement with world powers, though he has remained skeptical of Western intentions. Personally, Khamenei is known for his relatively reserved public demeanor. He delivers speeches that combine religious references, revolutionary history, and contemporary political analysis. He has written and translated religious and literary works, reflecting his intellectual interests. His authority is reinforced not only by formal constitutional powers but also by a network of institutions loyal to him. As he has aged, questions about succession have become more prominent in Iranian politics. However, the process remains opaque and controlled by constitutional mechanisms. His decades-long tenure makes him the second longest-serving supreme leader in Iran's modern history. In sum, the background of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is a story of religious scholarship, revolutionary activism, wartime leadership, and decades of centralized authority. From his early life in Mashhad to his current role as supreme leader, he has played a defining role in shaping Iran's political system, foreign policy direction, and ideological identity. His influence extends beyond national borders, affecting regional geopolitics and global diplomatic dynamics. His life reflects the broader trajectory of the Islamic Republic itself. Born out of revolution, shaped by war and confrontation, and sustained by a blend of ideology, institutional power, and strategic adaptation over more than 4 decades. The tensions between Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Israel, and USA are rooted in a complex mix of ideology, regional power struggles, historical grievances, security concerns, and global geopolitics that stretch back more than 4 decades. To understand the issue in full, it is essential to begin with the transformation of Iran following the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Before that revolution, Iran was ruled by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who maintained close strategic and military ties with the United States and had unofficial but cooperative relations with Israel. When the monarchy was overthrown and replaced with an Islamic republic under Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the ideological foundation of the state shifted dramatically. The new regime viewed the United States as a symbol of Western imperialism and interference, and it rejected Israel's legitimacy, framing it as an occupying power in Palestinian territories. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who became supreme leader in 1989 after Khomeini's death, inherited and continued this ideological stance. In Iran's political system, the supreme leader holds ultimate authority over foreign policy, military decisions, and strategic direction. Therefore, Khamenei's worldview has deeply shaped Iran's approach to Israel and the United States. From his perspective, Israel represents not only a geopolitical rival but also an ideological adversary, while the United States is seen as the main external force attempting to contain or weaken Iran and influence the Middle East according to its own strategic interests. The hostility between Iran and USA intensified immediately after the revolution during the 1979 hostage crisis, when American diplomats were held in Tehran for 444 days. This event cemented mutual distrust. Over the decades, successive U.S. administrations imposed economic sanctions on Iran, accusing it of sponsoring militant groups, destabilizing neighboring countries, and pursuing nuclear weapons. Iran, under Khamenei's leadership, has consistently denied seeking nuclear weapons, arguing that its nuclear program is for peaceful energy purposes. However, USA and Israel have repeatedly expressed fears that Iran aims to develop nuclear weapons capability, which they see as an existential threat to Israel and a major destabilizing factor in the region. A central issue in the conflict has been Iran's support for non-state armed groups opposed to Israel. Iran has provided financial, military, and political backing to Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Palestinian territories. Both groups have engaged in armed conflict with Israel. Hezbollah, in particular, fought a major war with Israel in 2006, and its arsenal of rockets has been seen by Israel as a direct threat. Iran's leadership presents this support as backing for resistance movements defending Palestinian and Lebanese rights. Israel and USA classify these groups as terrorist organizations and accuse Iran of using them as proxies to expand its influence and encircle Israel. The role of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has also been critical. The IRGC, especially its Quds force, has been involved in supporting allied militias across the Middle East, including in Syria and Iraq. The late commander Qasem Soleimani was a key architect of Iran's regional strategy. Under his leadership, Iran deepened its involvement in conflicts in Syria and Iraq, aiming to secure a corridor of influence stretching from Iran through Iraq and Syria to Lebanon. Israel viewed this expansion as a direct security threat and carried out numerous airstrikes against Iranian positions in Syria to prevent advanced weapons transfers to Hezbollah. The conflict intensified during the Syrian civil war. Iran intervened to support the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad, while Israel feared that Iranian forces would establish permanent military infrastructure near its borders. Israeli airstrikes targeted Iranian assets in Syria repeatedly. These strikes were often met with rhetoric from Iranian leaders condemning Israeli aggression, but both sides generally avoided full-scale war, instead engaging in a shadow conflict of limited strikes, cyber operations, and covert actions. Another major flashpoint has been Iran's nuclear program. Negotiations between Iran and world powers led to the signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2015. Under this agreement, Iran agreed to restrict its nuclear activities and allow international inspections in exchange for sanctions relief. The deal was supported by the Obama administration but strongly opposed by Israel's leadership, which argued that it did not permanently prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons capability. In 2018, President Donald Trump withdrew USA from the agreement and reinstated harsh sanctions on Iran. Khamenei criticized the move as proof that the United States could not be trusted. In response, Iran gradually reduced its compliance with the deal's restrictions, increasing uranium enrichment levels. This cycle heightened tensions further. Economic sanctions have been a core instrument of U.S. policy. These sanctions have targeted Iran's oil exports, banking system, and key industries, severely impacting its economy. Khamenei has portrayed the sanctions as economic warfare aimed at forcing regime change or submission. He has emphasized self-reliance and resistance, framing the conflict as a broader struggle against Western domination. Meanwhile, U.S. officials argue that sanctions are intended to pressure Iran to curb its nuclear program and regional activities. The killing of Qasem Soleimani in January 2020 by a U.S. drone strike in Baghdad marked one of the most dangerous moments in recent years. Iran retaliated by launching missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq. Although the confrontation stopped short of full war, it demonstrated how quickly tensions could escalate. Khamenei vowed revenge and described the strike as an act of state terrorism. The episode reinforced the deep hostility between Iran and USA. Cyber warfare has also been part of the confrontation. Israel and USA have been accused of conducting cyber operations against Iranian nuclear facilities, including the Stuxnet virus attack that damaged centrifuges. Iran has also been linked to cyber attacks against Israeli and American targets. This digital battlefield has become an important dimension of the broader conflict. The Palestinian issue remains central to Iran's ideological opposition to Israel. Khamenei consistently expresses support for Palestinian resistance and calls for a referendum among all inhabitants of historic Palestine to determine its future political system. Israeli leaders interpret such statements as calls for the elimination of their state. This fundamental disagreement over legitimacy makes reconciliation extremely difficult. For Khamenei and the Iranian leadership, opposing Israel strengthens Iran's standing among certain regional audiences and reinforces its revolutionary identity. Under President Joe Biden, efforts were made to revive the nuclear deal, but negotiations have faced obstacles, including disagreements over sanctions relief and guarantees. Meanwhile, regional tensions have been exacerbated by periodic escalations between Israel and armed groups in the Gaza Strip and cross-border exchanges involving Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran's backing of these groups remains a point of contention. In Syria, Israel has continued air operations aimed at preventing Iran from establishing advanced missile capabilities near its territory. In Iraq, Iranian-aligned militias have occasionally targeted U.S. forces stationed there since the Iraq War. These actions are part of a broader pattern in which Iran seeks to pressure USA indirectly rather than through conventional war. The rivalry also extends to maritime security in the Persian Gulf. There have been incidents involving oil tankers, drone shootdowns, and naval confrontations. Each side accuses the other of provocation. For Iran, demonstrating the ability to disrupt shipping lanes serves as leverage against sanctions pressure. For USA and its allies, maintaining freedom of navigation is a strategic priority. Ideologically, Khamenei frames the conflict as resistance against what he calls global arrogance, a term often used to describe U.S. dominance. He argues that Israel functions as a forward base for Western influence in the region. In contrast, American and Israeli officials argue that Iran's revolutionary ideology drives instability and fuels militant violence. The narrative on each side reinforces domestic support and justifies hardline policies. At the regional level, normalization agreements between Israel and several Arab states have shifted the geopolitical landscape. Iran views these agreements as attempts to isolate it and strengthen an anti-Iran coalition. Israel, for its part, sees growing regional partnerships as a way to counter Iran's influence. This strategic competition affects conflicts in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, where local dynamics intersect with the broader Iran-Israel-USA triangle. The possibility of a direct military confrontation has always loomed but has generally been avoided. Israel has hinted that it may act unilaterally to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons capability. USA has maintained that all options are on the table, though it has also shown caution about entering another major Middle Eastern war. Iran, under Khamenei's leadership, emphasizes deterrence, relying on missile capabilities and regional allies to discourage attacks. Public opinion within Iran also shapes the leadership's posture. While many Iranians suffer under sanctions and may favor improved relations with the West, the political system gives ultimate authority to the supreme leader and aligned institutions. Hardline factions argue that compromise with USA leads to vulnerability. The experience of the nuclear deal's collapse strengthened this viewpoint. The conflict is therefore not a single issue but a layered struggle involving nuclear policy, regional power projection, ideological rivalry, proxy warfare, sanctions, and national identity. It is sustained by mutual mistrust built over decades. Each side perceives the other as an existential or strategic threat. Khamenei sees resistance to Israel and USA as central to preserving the Islamic Republic's revolutionary character and independence. Israel sees Iran's nuclear ambitions and regional network of armed allies as an existential danger. USA views Iran as a disruptive actor challenging its influence and threatening its allies. In summary, the issue between Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and Israel and USA is the product of historical rupture since 1979, ideological opposition to Israel's existence, strategic competition for regional dominance, Iran's support for armed groups hostile to Israel, disputes over nuclear development, economic sanctions, proxy conflicts across multiple countries, and periodic direct confrontations such as the Soleimani killing and retaliatory strikes. The conflict persists because it is embedded in national narratives and security doctrines on all sides. Any lasting resolution would require rebuilding trust, addressing security guarantees, redefining regional balances of power, and finding a durable solution to the Palestinian question, all of which remain profoundly challenging in the current geopolitical climate.